Hello and welcome to the 50th episode for Journey to the Rise. I am so grateful for those of you who have joined me along the way. This podcast would not be possible without you or our guests. And wow, have we had some incredible people share their story with us over the past 49 episodes. We've talked to a world-renowned marine biologist, relationship coach, nutrition coach, fitness and wellness coach, a hypnotherapist, photographers, authors, and so much more in between. I want to make sure I give a very special thank you to someone because without this person, what this podcast has become would not be possible without her, and that is Terry Decker. I like to call her Mom. She's allowed me to use a space in her home to record these podcasts so I can talk to guests without interruption. She's been a big supporter of me and a very big influence on me and has given me much guidance throughout the years, and I am grateful. I thought I would go back over the episodes from the past season, starting with your favorites. The episodes with the most downloads in season 1 was no other than the delightful Bren McClain.
Oh, wow. I grew up on a 72-acre beef and grain farm, beef cattle and grain farm in the upstate of South Carolina, a little town called Anderson. It's not on the map for anybody to know. Well, wait a minute. It's near Clemson, and everybody usually knows the Clemson Tigers, Clemson University Tigers. They've won, some national championships.
Yeah.
But my little hometown of Anderson is, I don't think anybody would have ever heard of it unless they'd read my book. I just have to tell you that.
I love it. I love it. So you're trying to put it on the map. That's amazing. And
well, you know what I like to say? There's never been a complete novel set in Anderson.
Wow.
So, Lucretia, I like to think of it as kind of being my love letter to my hometown. That feels so good to me.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love that so much.
Oh, yeah.
And what was life like for you in this small town? Like, you're on this farm, so were you like a typical farm girl running around barefoot? Like, what was life?
Oh, yeah. Except, I've written this novel that prominently features a cow, so people like to think, oh, Bren, you grew up on that farm and you all had cattle, so I bet you helped your daddy with the cattle. I bet you were in 4-H. No, not in the least bit. My mind really, Lucretia, growing up on the farm was more about the land. I used to pack a peanut butter sandwich and a canteen of water. And this is beginning at about age 3 years old now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take a notepad and a pencil, even though I didn't know how to write. We didn't have kindergarten when I was growing up. But nonetheless, I would take this paper and pencil and sustenance and go to the highest place on my daddy's farm, which is in a back pasture. And Lucretia, I would just sit there for hours and hours and hours with this notepad and my thoughts. Just being out in the land is what I really, really, really loved.
Now, when did you have this story that, which is very exciting, just celebrate its 6th year being published, come to you? I know. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. 6 years. Okay, let me put it in perspective before I dive into that specifically, okay?
Yeah.
So I started writing fiction on September 18th, 1988. And yes, I do remember the day.
I love it.
I was in corporate America, and I was bored out of my mind. And I picked up a pencil and paper, and I started writing short stories. And I started noticing that everything I was writing kind of was the same story, kind of was the same thing. So then I decided to write a novel. I wrote a novel. It was called Darby He Liked Ropes. I got a literary agent with that book, but we ultimately didn't sell it. So then I turned to the next book that I was writing. It's a novel called Willie June. And Lucretia, it was based on a secret that a man in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was living at the time, confessed really to me. And this was in June of 1994, I think.
Wow.
And it was on that secret. It was inspired by that secret that I wrote the second novel, Willie June. And as I was writing it, I came to know that what I was really writing about was motherhood. I really, really wanted to celebrate mothers. And I think at its core, I was actually celebrating my own relationship and my own love of my mother. We were absolutely best friends. And we just were each other's best thing. And I don't have any children, but I wanted to celebrate that bond with my mother. So I wrote this novel, Willie June. Well, guess what? My mom died, while I was writing that book. I eventually finished it, but it was a complete and utter mess.
Wow.
And I had two really good reader friends who both had the courage and really enough love for me to say to me, Bren, no, girl,
really?
That book, no, After all of this work, now understand that from 1988, when I began writing fiction, this would have been in 2004. So do the math for me.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what, 10 years? Let's see, 10 years? No. 16 years had passed. I tried to hone my skill in short stories. I'd written this other novel. I'd gotten an agent. It didn't go anywhere. I wrote this other book. So, the clock's ticking. 16 years now. And I'm having to face the fact that, this one's not going to fly. This one's not going to fly either.
Wow.
So I put it on the proverbial shelf like I had that other book and got busy about life. And then, guess what? I started doing research on actually the novel that I'm writing right now. I got to tell you that typically, Lucretia, my stories choose me. Yeah. My stories find me. And my soul was dying. That's all there is to it. I was wilting on the vine. And so I was so blessed because I had begun doing this training for Bell South executives. And I call it media training, communications training, how to talk to reporters, how to give speeches, those kinds of things. And so, Lucretia, I decided one day, actually, after I wrote my obituary, it was one of those days in corporate America, I thought, I can't go on. And so I wrote my obituary, and it said that I was a writer, and it said that I was a communications consultant. And so help me God, I turned to my computer and wrote my resignation and walked out of Bell South, gave them 2 weeks notice, just on a wing and a prayer, actually. And I knew that I had the skill for teaching and for consulting, and I just kind of gave it all to the universe, and it gave it right back to me. So I was getting despondent, I'll be honest with you. And I happened to be, again, visiting my daddy, and it was his birthday in Anderson, and I'd heard that Pat Conroy's agent, a woman named Marley Russoff, was going to give a talk a couple of towns over from Anderson about the state of book publishing today. And I went, oh, hey, I need to go. So I went. And in this talk she gave, she said, it's hard to get published right now. And this was 10 years ago. It's hard to get published right now, especially if you write about small towns, especially if it's the South. Oh, gosh, ding, ding, ding on all of those. And she said, but listen, I don't want you all to get upset because there's a silver lining in all of this. And, of course, my ears perked up like nuts. And she said, the silver lining is the rise of the small press.
Oh.
And Lucretia, when she said that, my energy totally changed. I could feel this surge up through my body, like, tell me more. Yeah. So when she finished, I went over to her and I said, thank you very much. Could you give me some examples of small presses? And she said, well, my client, Pat Conroy, has just started his own imprint, Story River Books, that's going to be administered by the University of South Carolina Press. And I had read some press on that. I said, yes, I have read that. So, went back to Anderson, and this was in February. It's about this time. And, got on the website, and I saw that the submission period was beginning June 1st. Okay, so June 1st. And I said, okay, put that in your calendar, Bren. I want you to submit. Now, in the meantime, in April, in Charleston, I attended a writers' conference. And actually, I should say, not just attended it, I helped organize it. Wow. And so I was doing some, moderating some workshops, blah, blah, doing a lot of, that kind of work. And the first day of that conference, this dark-haired man came up to me at the end and said, Bren, I really enjoyed that. And I said, oh, thank you very much. And, if you've ever put on a conference or anything, a lot of people are trying to get at you, so I didn't get really to talk to him any more than that. All right, so the very next morning early, I did another workshop, and here he comes again. Highly complimentary. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. I did another one right before lunch that day. And yes, you guessed it, here he comes again. Bren, that was really good. I enjoyed it. At this time, I happened to look down his chest at his lanyard. I had not looked at it before. And guess what? This was a guy, Jonathan Haupt, who was the director of the University of South Carolina Press.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Now, and then he turned to leave, and people were saying, Bren, can you how you are.
Yeah.
And y'all, this is the only selfish thing I did then, but I just made a beeline. I made a beeline to the room where we were going to have our luncheon and walked in, scoured the room for where this man might be. And guess what? The seat to his left was empty. And I would have probably knocked somebody down to get over to that seat, but I did. And when I sat down, I got down to business. I said, Jonathan, I see you're the director of the University of South Carolina Press. I understand that you administer Pat's imprint, blah, blah, yeah. And also know that your submission period is June 1st. He said, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, I have a novel, and I'm going to send it to you. He said, well, tell me what it's about. I told him what it's about. He reached in his pocket, pulled out a business card, gave it to me, and said, don't wait. Send it now.
Oh, my gosh.
And I knew, and this was like late April, I knew when I sent him my manuscript, I knew that I was stepping in. It still gets me. I knew that I was stepping in to what was set up for me. Wow. I knew it.
The second most downloaded episode was a recent one, and that was with my guest, Deanna, Czerwonka, LaMont.
Yeah.
So what's it like to work? Because that's a small radio station. What's it like to work in such a small environment and for a small community?
It was I always said it was a good gig. Oh, this is a good gig. Because again, I worked on 100% commission. So I was in charge of, what my outcome was. And Tom is an excellent marketer. So I learned a ton from him, and the opportunity with, my coworkers and the community of getting involved. So my territory was just the one town. Some of the salespeople could go out, different areas of Northwest Wisconsin, and mine was just Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And so it was really getting to know the business people, developing a trust, because I was never a good salesperson. I still am not. I dread asking. After over 30 years, that was so hard for me. But what was easy was having a conversation with people, hearing about their passion for their business, what their needs were, and truly listening, and then I either could come up with a plan that would help their business grow, or I couldn't, and be honest about that. So I never really had to sell. And I say that lightly because, yes, we were under the gun to sell. But
right.
It was more building relationships and trust with my clients. And so then you get to see a different side of business people than you would just, either walking into their business or seeing them on the street. So that was a huge benefit of being in a small town, because everybody wants to, support one another at the core. Is there competition, of course, but I think overall it was a great experience. Although I knew when it was time to leave.
Really? And what was the deciding factor there? Because, that's a long career to be dedicated to a company. So what happened?
Mm-hmm. It took me about 8 years to do the change. For 8 years, I felt this nudge because my heart was saying something different. And it goes back to, again, being that little girl, like, is this all there is? There was some uneasiness, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So again, I'm asking myself, like, gosh, is this all there is? Why do I feel the unease? Because my brain is telling me, Deanna, this is a good gig. It's a good gig.
Yeah.
You can work from home. There were some perks that I'm super grateful for. And anyway, after doing my own, self-work, that's a, lifelong process, and it will continue to be. The more I learn, the less I know. But I really got in touch with myself, and it's like, I need to make the change. Because what I have figured out is the universe is always supporting us. Always. And you can fill in universe with whatever, God, source, I don't mean any specific connotation when I say that. It's just a word I use. So the universe is always supporting us. And we'll get a little nudge, a little tickle, a little tap on the shoulder. Like, you might want to think about, going this direction. Turn left instead of going right. And when we don't listen, that little nudge, that little tap becomes a little stronger shove. We still don't listen. It becomes a push. We still don't listen. And it's a kick in the pants and very uncomfortable.
Right.
So I had some other things in my life that I experienced that way at that time. And I thought, I need to let go here. Because really I had no guarantee for an income. And I still need an income.
Right.
So I gave a 6-month notice after my 8-year contemplation of being there, 26 years total.
Goodness.
A little slow. But on my last day, what I wanted to do was really follow my heart and step into, my side business of inspiring wellness for life, doing healing work. And I had all my stuff in storage that didn't fit in her house since 2011. And now, here we are at 2015. And there was somebody in Cumberland that said, our house has been up for sale. And we're taking it off the market. We're going to Arizona. Why don't you move in here? Don't worry, you'll be here through the winter. We're not coming back from Arizona until spring. And I thought, oh, great. And they knew that I, at that time, was teaching some classes and doing energy work. And I thought, now, after all these few months, I could get back into that. So I went to my storage shed and loaded everything up, totally staged the house. There happened to be somebody that looked at it 2 weeks it sold. And I thought, wow.
Oh, no.
Somebody else asked, my house has been on the market for 7 years. Can you help me?
Right.
And I considered it. But I actually had a ticket to go to Abraham Hicks, see Abraham Hicks in Phoenix. And I said, I'll get back in touch with you when I come back. But I thought, I am not moving this stuff. I had it in storage. And if you haven't looked at it in 5 years, You don't even know what you have. You don't need it. And there was a lot of emotion and energy with all that stuff, because stuff that I had over 2 marriages. And so I got a little carried away. I started to put on Facebook. I'd take a picture, post, take a picture, post. I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. I either sold or gave away everything other than what would fit in maybe a 12 by 12 room. And then my daughter had said, Mom, why don't you don't have to come back. Just get a one-way ticket when you go see Abraham and see what happens. And I thought, oh my God, I've always been so responsible. Right. That would be irresponsible. But gosh, that sounds really fun.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm getting a one-way ticket.
No
so I got a one-way
way.
ticket. So I
That's
go
amazing.
to Abraham. Yeah. I go to Abraham, and after the workshop, I knew I was going to stay in Sedona for 2 nights. Well, I did. That turned into 4, which turned into, there were some other things that happened, just kind of road tripping with my daughter because she joined me. And it took me 6 months to leave Sedona. And then I went back to I forced myself to go back to Wisconsin. And I booked up at a place for a month in Sedona, and I thought, if my heart pounds when I pull into Sedona, I'm staying. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't know where I was going to live. There were some circumstances where I lined something up within a week. It was like, nope, it's no longer available. Everything just kept opening up. And so I had 100% unfallible trust in the process. It's like, if your heart says yes, if your heart says go, and your mind is arguing,
right, that logic,
follow the heart.
Yes.
Yeah. Follow the heart, because there, when we think of how, if I was going to plan to move to Sedona, I've got to figure out, how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to move my stuff. I don't know. And we can maybe think of 4, tops 7 ways to do anything in life. So not just, moving, anything. Well, the universe has, a gajillion ways for something to happen. So when we think that we can control, okay, it's got to happen, it's got to look like this, who are we kidding? The universe, so I might think of option 4, 7, and 9, and the universe is saying, oh, no. Idea 5,284 is going to get you there the fastest. You're going to have the most fun. It's going to be easy for you. Take that.
Coming in third was a yoga instructing mama, Steph Davis.
And you had shared on your Instagram post, it was in 2018, you had a dream to share oneness with self, with God, and the world around us. What steps have you taken to share that oneness?
That's such a great question. I had clarity around that pretty early on. I think when we still even had our design business, that I wanted to do to focus on, I don't know if it's yoga, but on the concept of yoke, which is what yoga means. And that is alignment with body, soul, spirit, alignment with, for me at least, it's alignment with God. And so pretty soon after I got my yoga license, or while I was getting my yoga license, I filled up a whole notebook of just ideas and clarity and insight of what I wanted to do. And I went forth to try to kind of make it happen in that season. And it was when I was pregnant with my second child. And there was a sense of peace around the fact, it's not time. This isn't the time to do that. And so, with some sadness and peace, I kind of put it to the side. But that is something that we just had our third child. that I am really interested in kind of rolling out in the next few years. I feel like the podcast, Spirituality for Mamas, was a little sneak peek of some of the work that I want to do. Of course, that's focused on motherhood, but motherhood as a spiritual path, motherhood as, understanding what love is, on motherhood as understanding who God is, motherhood as aligning with your own body. I mean, hello, your own body, your own mind, your own sense of spirit and love and passion, in order to create a family that you really enjoy and have vision for. So that's kind of the motherhood part of that I've explored or enjoyed talking to other women about. But yeah, I do see a future with doing teaching some of the stuff we've been in yoga class together, teaching yoga, meditation, and other just practices to bring ease and alignment into life.
This guest continued to pop in and out of the top 5 all season long, Kris D'Amico. So you get into photography, and you've been very successful with your photography, where many have struggled and even failed. What do you think is different about you that has brought on your level of success?
I feel like I feel like there's a lot of artists out there that are much better at the craft than I am. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, because that was kind of the whole purpose behind starting this new reactor company. But I feel like I can point a lot of my successes personally and professionally to just trying to be nice, trying to always assume positive intent, trying to, kind of listen more than I speak. You wouldn't guess that from this interview so far, but I don't know. It's just, I feel like if you can figure out a way to be good to everybody in your life in some way, and it doesn't have to be these crazy things. You don't have to like kill yourself serving people, but if you just be nice to people, I feel like that goes a long way. And I feel like that has opened doors and kept doors open that probably would have closed otherwise. And then with that, I love diving into the details of photography and of image making. I'll see something online that I'm inspired by, and it's like, okay, why does that look like an illustration? They're not doing this technique, which it doesn't look like it. They're not doing this technique, so it's got to be retouching. Okay, why are they retouching it that way? And so it's just, I love that kind of level of kind of nerdery around the craft. So I think, and I don't mind pushing that boundary and kind of being like, let's figure out this look, let's do this thing, without kind of being willing to do it myself. And I feel like that, though, has come from years of dealing with people that are very cranky about things that are kind of ridiculous. And I'm like, it's cool. Don't just take a breath. Who cares? Big deal.
Yeah.
So I feel like those kind of, and that's kind of a circular. Did I even answer the question? I feel like I'm rambling now.
You are answering the question. Yeah, absolutely. I think kindness goes a long way, and your intrigue of curiosity of how to capture the image, how to make it better, how you can put your own spin on it, speaks a lot about you as an intellect and as a creative. And by putting people first, it sounds like you're not so much worried about the bottom line. We all have bills to pay, but it sounds like in your craft, you've been putting people first, and then the money has been following that path.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something too that, for years, I just recently took it off. I had chief janitor on the bottom of my email signature. Obviously, mostly in jest, but kind of not.
Right.
But it's one of the idea that, I mean, because, I hire grips to do this, and, lighting directors to do that, and DPs to run cameras, and other photographers to run bays, and stylists to do, right? And I am a firm believer that regardless of your position on set. Everybody's got a role, but I don't think anybody should be above something. I feel like, and I'm not saying that you want the executive producer taking the trash out. At the same time, they should be willing to if that's a need, right? And so I feel like there's a cultural thing that I feel a lot of folks, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to talk ill of anybody. I just feel like if we could all come back to that center and be like, there's nothing, I like you, I love what we're doing, I want the best results. How do we get there collectively? Does that mean I need to take out the trash? And I'll take out the trash. You know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the approach. And I feel like that probably has gotten us further than anywhere else.
Apparently, real estate is a hot topic because the episode with the 5th most downloads was Jenna Hickman.
And I love that you're supportive of him and his career, and clearly he's supportive of you, of what you pursue.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole perfect balance to our relationship. As challenging as it is to both be in an entrepreneurial state now, me, pursuing real estate, him pursuing music, there's no financial security in that, right? We're just taking a lot of risk. But with that, we can support each other. And we really realize, with dreams come a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work, but we're both here to be teammates and support the dreams, however that looks. So it's very encouraging that we both have each other to lean on and just push each other to the next level.
That's amazing. And when did real estate start to grab your interest?
So it's funny looking back because in Florida, actually, I met with an agent down there once. Because I transitioned jobs several times in Florida. I went from being an event coordinator to then actually getting personal training certified. I went from events to fitness, and that's where all that started. But in that time, I actually did meet with an agent down there once and just talked about, what is the day in the life of a real estate agent? What does this entail? So I started to think on it, but then I was also at the time where I was starting to think of leaving Florida. So I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why would I get a license or consider a license even in Florida if I'm going to leave, because you have to have a state license. So now full circle, it's funny that, that curiosity was there in me years back, and it really wasn't until 2020, pandemic happening, losing jobs, that I had that moment again, like, you know what, why don't I pursue real estate? We're sitting here, right? We were all at home at that time. I just had another God wink moment of, well, I could do something with my time here right now while we're at home. I could do real estate school. They're doing it all on Zoom, all online. So that's actually when I signed up and made value of my time at home.
I love that. And what is it about this very stressful process? Because I've heard real estate school is not like, I have a friend who says it's intimidating to him. Trying to work with clients is stressful. You're dealing with like ups and downs of changes that happen when people are trying to buy a house, sell a house. It sounds really, really stressful. What is that of interest for you?
Truth be told, it can be very, very, very stressful. So a lot of that is just managing the stresses, but I love the people connection, right? So real estate is not HGTV. Love the shows. I watch them almost every night before bed, but that gives a very false perception of the reality of a real estate career. So there's so much more behind the scenes to it. So when I tell people about it, it is a startup business. Like you would start up any entrepreneur journey, any restaurant, any passion that you have, it's a startup business. And what do businesses need? We need clients. So real estate school, yeah, it's tough. And then like most schools, you come out of it and you're like, well, shoot, okay, now how do I be an agent?
Right.
I don't know. So it really takes a lot of, one, aligning with the right brokerage. Two, I would encourage finding a mentor to really lead you and not be afraid to like ask for the help and the shadowing and all the learning that you can do. And then three, to just not be afraid to put yourself out there, network, let people know you're doing this. You come out of real estate school and feel like, okay, I have no experience. how do I sell myself to people? How are they going to trust me with my, if I've never sold a home before, how do they trust me? And a lot of that is because you have a team behind you, right? We've gone through school. You continue to learn from your brokerage and continuing education courses. And so the more you learn and the more you do, the better you become.
I was actually surprised to see this one drop out of the top 5, as it has been in the top 5 for several months. But 6 is still pretty amazing. Mandy Farmer.
Speaking of your blog, it's beautiful, and it gives really great information who want to travel as a family. But what I really appreciate about your blog is you also talk about traveling without the kids. Can we chat about the importance of why you felt you needed this to be addressed?
Yes, absolutely. This was one of my biggest reasons for starting the blog again. I feel that marriage is really hard work. Like, everything's hard. Raising kids is hard. Being a dog mom is hard. Working on multiple businesses, it's all hard work. And you have to put time into it to make it successful. If you just sat back and never, worked on your copyright, it wouldn't go anywhere, like we were talking about earlier. You have to make the steps. So for marriage, I think it's key to spend time with that person to make sure you don't wake up, when you're empty nesters and you don't like each other anymore because you haven't put any time in together. You focused it all on the kids. Yeah. So there was a time back when our babies were little bitty babies, our oldest, I call them our bigs. So our bigs were very little. My mother-in-law flew over from the States to Australia and stayed with us and sent us away on a weekend away to the other side of Australia, to Perth. So we were on the east side. She sent us, well, she didn't tell us where to go, but we were like, let's go to Perth. So we flew the other side of the country to Perth and just spend a weekend connecting. We got couples massages. We went on all the dates. We went on some tours. We just had fun together, and it was so refreshing because, number one, I didn't really want to go on the trip with him. Like I said, we were not in a good place, and I was just like, anything to not have to change a diaper or, have my name, mommy said, let's go. So that quickly turned to okay, this is great. We're having some conversation. I feel like we were just living like roommates, raising these kids together. So that weekend was I say it saved my marriage. It really did. And hats off to my amazing mother-in-law who came over, made us go, told us you have to do this. I'm so grateful for her. So while we were on that trip, we loved it so much. We're like, okay, let's do this every year, once a year. Let's make a promise. If we can't go away for, a week, let's do a weekend. If we can't do a weekend, let's do a night. Just one thing we can, look forward to. One thing that is just going to be us, that the kids aren't needing our attention. We're having adult conversation. We don't have to take a stroller or, worry about nap times, schedule. Where it's just us. And so that, like I said, saved our marriage. And because it was such a saving grace for us, I realized okay, maybe more people need to hear this. Maybe it would help somebody else if I start blogging and sharing about our story and just the trips that we take. And I hope it doesn't ever come across to people that come across my blog or my content we get to go do all these trips. Because it's not like that. It's, like I said, it's hard and you have to put in the time. And it's not, bragging. It's hey, you can do this too. You can if you can't take a weekend, take a night and go, in your local town to whatever hotel or whatever, swap houses, have someone come stay. It doesn't have to be a grandparent if you're not in your family. Have a friend come stay and you go stay at their house without kids. Just some time to connect. I think it can be done. We did it in Australia and had no family there. So for the years after when my mother-in-law wasn't there, we had friends help us out just to be able to have that time. So you can make it work if you have a support system close or don't, you can figure it out how to make it work. And it's important.
All the way from Thailand, 7th brings you Erick Prince.
Where I wasn't able to go to law school and I was encouraged to pursue my passion of photography and exploration and just getting out there. I ended up buying a one-way ticket to London and I've been on the road ever since.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What was your major?
That was 11 years ago. 11 years ago.
Wow.
Triple major, government, Government history English with a minor in RTF, radio, television, and film.
Wow, that's impressive. When did you start your blog?
That was 2012. 2012.
Okay. Were you just
And it
wanting
was
to find
actually it was totally by accident. I never even. Oh yeah, so the blog thing wasn't. It was an accident. I didn't even understand the whole concept of blogging for a living, or like this is early days. Like now it's so common, but back then there were no professional travel bloggers. Back then there was really. I was just doing it for fun because I started a small nonprofit foundation in high school called A World Beyond Youth Exploration, where the goal was to get inner city kids abroad with a camera in their hand and show them the world, because those are the things, exploring the world in the military and using photography as my medium to show the world what I saw was my way of escaping, so to speak. So I wanted to give that same experience to low-income kids from where I grew up. You know, kids who grew up in a space of being invisible. You know, we're raised if you're young and black in Cleveland in the 90s, you know, you were invisible unless you were committing a crime. So I want to give these kids a creative outlet, because I understand that everybody can't be a professional athlete, everybody can't be a musician, but photography is one of those mediums that anybody can really learn.
What kind of challenges did you face when you started pursuing being a travel journalist?
Honestly, I didn't even pursue it. It just kind of happened.
Wow.
I really, and you know, I rail against this idea, this tokenization of people of color, of diversity. I spoke a little bit about this recently in a video, is that the travel industry is hypocritical. The travel industry pretends it cares about diversity, but it doesn't unless they can make money from it, which is why you generally only see any kind of diversity during Black History Month in terms of people of color, or it's Gay Pride month or time that you see LGBTQIA communities. Like you're only starting to see disabled travelers or plus size travelers in the media. Why? Because they can make money from it. And, you know, it's a little bit frustrating because for me, I look back at when I first started and I'm like, my God, if I knew then what I know now about budgets, about representation, about access, I would have gone about my career significantly more intentionally, and I would have charged a lot more. Right? So, you know, with that, my biggest thing is humans helping humans and us trying to leave a legacy. You know, I close out every video on YouTube, leave the world better than you found it. And people constantly complain, spend so much time bitching and moaning about how bad social media is and how bad the governments are. And how I'm like, yo, I don't have time for that, yo. I'm just trying to make it better, just a little bit better, like 0.0000.1% better than I found it. And it was a funny thing. One of my goals, people always ask me why I smile so much and why I'm so happy. And trust me, if you see me frown or angry, run, because it's a problem. I try to make somebody smile or laugh every single day that I'm out that I don't know. Now imagine what the world would be like if everybody did that. If you just tried to make somebody smile or laugh that you don't know. I don't care where in the world you are or where you're from. If you move through the world with positivity, that ripple effect is powerful. Life is really rough. You know, I know anybody who's listening to this, like, oh, Erick, it's easy for you to say because you're living a dream, blah, blah, blah. Yo, I was in war. 2 wars, five tours of duty. Trust me, I know pain and suffering and conflict and the negative side. I grew up in East Cleveland in the 80s and 90s. I'm very well aware of how rough life is and can be. But if you step back out of this chaos that we have as adults now, out of this ego that we've built up around ourselves, making ourselves the center of the universe, and by proxy, where we're from, the center of the universe, we start to see how small we truly are. We start to see how limited our time is here, and we start to appreciate the little things.
Who doesn't love a world-renowned marine biologist? You all certainly did. Thomas Illiffe. quite the adventure. And speaking of adventure, I read that you led a team of 9 other divers and you descended 462 feet into Phantom Springs Cave in West Texas, making it the deepest underwater cave dive ever in the U.S. First of all, how do you plan for this? You were just explaining you need to plan a third of your oxygen in, a third out, a third from emergency. So now I'm assuming you're planning extra gas that you're taking with you. Like, did you suspect this passage would go? And it's not like dropping into a vertical cave and bouncing back up. Like, take me down the journey of this accomplishment. This is fascinating.
Okay, so the story is that I'd heard about this cave and other people had been exploring it. And they explored a mile into the cave, but it was basically a horizontal tunnel at relatively shallow depths, anywhere from 30 feet or less down to about 80 feet maximum depth. So it was kind of moving along up and down, but never going down very much. And this other team of divers got a mile into the cave, and that was about as far as they could go with the equipment and the technology they had at that time.
Sure.
So that was basically, the cave was still continuing. It was just that they weren't able to go any further than a mile in. So I thought, well, I've got some friends who were, again, world expert cave divers, and I invited them to come over from Florida. The cave was actually owned by the federal government, by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, so I had to apply and get a permit from them, and it was very difficult to get a permit from them, so it took me about a year or more to apply to finally get a permit.
Wow.
So after great difficulty, I got a research permit to go in there and allow us to go diving. And so the first year we go over, we go out into the desert in West Texas in December, I think, or January, middle of winter, we go out there. And we get out there and it starts snowing.
What?
So here we are in the desert in Texas, and it's snowing. So we drive out on these ranch roads to get out to this spring, and there's iron gated bars over the entrance of it. So we start diving there, and our team is using closed circuit rebreathers. So this is a device that recycles your gas when you exhale. With normal scuba diving, when you exhale, there's a stream of bubbles that come up for the water. And when you inhale again, it's out of your tanks. So every time you exhale, you're losing all the gas that you've got out of your tanks. With a closed circuit rebreather, when you take a breath and exhale it, it goes through a carbon dioxide scrubber that removes the carbon dioxide out of your exhaled gas. You put in a small amount of pure oxygen, 100% oxygen in tiny amounts, and you breathe in that same gas mixture again. So you're breathing it over and over again, just going around in a big loop, recirculating it, and there are no bubbles. So you can stay down much longer. You can have very small little tanks. And basically, with my small little tanks that I have, which are about 1/3 the size of a normal scuba tank, I can stay down as much as 8 to 10 hours at any depth. So it's not depth dependent. With normal scuba diving, the deeper you go, the shorter you can stay. With a rebreather, doesn't matter how deep you are, except for the decompression you're going to have to do at the end of the dive. But as far as gas staying down, it doesn't matter. because you're only using this tiny little bit of oxygen that's out of your small scuba tank.
Great.
So we were using these closed circuit rebreathers, but we anticipated the cave was going to stay at the same depth, 30 to 80 feet or so.
Mm-hmm.
So we have gas supply and everything set up for diving in reasonably shallow depths. So we send a team out. We have an exploration team. They go out and they get a mile into the cave. They reach the end of the guideline, the exploratory guideline of the other divers. They tie in a new guideline and they start exploring. And almost immediately, the cave starts dipping, stair-stepping down.
Whoa.
And they get down to a depth of about 190 feet, and they can look down this huge underwater shaft, and it looks like it's going to 250 or 300 feet or more, but they don't have the proper gas mixtures to be able to go down that deep. So this was all on their very first dive in the cave, and so they came back out, and they can't go any further. That's as far as they can go. So we organized another expedition a year later, and this time they come out with gas mixtures that allow them to go much deeper. And so this time they go down to the 460 odd feet, and the tunnel is still going on. And they have little scooters that are pulling them along like torpedo-like devices that the divers are holding on, that are towing them through the water. And one of the scooters, torpedo-like devices, implodes from the water pressure. It just gets crushed because the water pressure is so high at that depth.
Oh my God.
Fortunately, the other diver, they were able to hold on to one another and use the remaining torpedo scooter to pull them out of the cave.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And so that's where they had to stop. In the cave, the deeper they went and the further into the cave they went, the larger and larger the tunnel was getting. So they were nowhere near the end of the cave, but because of the depth and the fact that they're already a mile into the cave. In most caves, in deep caves, it's right at the entrance. So you enter the cave and you immediately go straight down. This cave, you enter the water, you swim a mile in, and then you go down. So it's considerably more complicated because you do your decompression a mile into the cave, and then you have to swim a mile out of the cave, going up and down to get out.
When you want inspiration, who is better to bring you up than an author and motivational speaker, Teresa Foley-Batts?
Yeah, what's the classroom of life? Tell me about it.
Okay, the classroom of life. When I say that, I'm saying that every day that we wake up, we're in the classroom of life. We're going to be tested, okay? We're going to be filled with different things, and that's why it's so important that you watch what you feed your mind and what you feed your spirit. And I believe that the classroom, when you get the test, it's not to hurt you, but it's to help you to grow. And I feel like daily I'm being tested because situations come up and I have to sometimes stop and think before I respond, rather than just my first initial response is to say this. I have to think about it and say, is this the right thing at this time? So it's about the test. And the test, we don't realize the test is just to help us become better. It's not to, and there will be times You're going to fail that test. But guess what? You still can't give up. You have to come back the next day and let's do this again.
Just about everyone loves plants, and you clearly all love plant savvy. Savannah Toal.
Because at the end of the day, I'm the only person that will really be there for myself, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
really, yeah, I was like trying to find different avenues, and that's why I started a plant blog, because I was like, oh, I can write, yeah, I was like, I could write about like my passions, and this can be an outlet for me doing this. So I started it, and I created the whole website by myself, and I had my friend do my logo, and she talked me into starting posting on TikTok. She's like, you gotta post on TikTok. And I was like, I don't know about, I don't know about all that. I don't know. But I ended up posting on TikTok, and some of my videos started blowing up, and I started gaining a following, and I was like, I could do this. Like, I could really do this. And then just kind of spiraled from there, I guess.
Wow. And you're like, I want to write about it. I hear that so often. People start a blog and it launches a career, books, like a whole business. So I love that you're like, I'm just going to blog about this. So what was your initial blog all about as you're sitting there?
It was like all about plants. So I was like, I was so anal about it. I was like, I just want to make sure that everything's right. So I need to have 10 blogs already written. I need to have all this stuff already written before I launch. And I sent the website out to all of my friends and was like, look at this. Tell me what you think about it. I was because I was also nervous that I would explain, like I explained it to my partner, and I explained it to my sister and like my family. And I said, I'm not going to be like the other bloggers. Because, like I felt like at the time blogging was very much so, I don't know, because almost influencer, like how people talk about influencers now, and it's like, oh God, you know what I mean? And I was like, I just didn't want to be, I was like, I don't know, I just want to write about this. This could be cool,
Yeah.
So I just wrote about, I did plant profiles, and
Nice.
I talked about like beginner plants and specific plants that I wanted to talk about. It was all plant related, and like gift guides and that kind of stuff. It was very, I don't know, I really enjoyed it. And I'm starting to get back into blogging, because I kind of, once, the full business really launched, I just kind of got busy and stopped blogging.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get back into it now. But
A man who's standing up with a lot of pride, Zombie Dan.
That's amazing. And that group has grown, and if I understand correctly, you have different people have started their own, and there's like regions. Like, it's expanded beyond just what you started. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane, really. People ask me all the time, did you ever expect this? No. Like, I remember thinking, I told a friend, if we get 1,000 people in this group, I'll be happy, Within 24 hours, we had 1,000 members of the original group. So Stand in Pride International is the original group, and we are sitting at 48,000 members right now.
That's amazing.
And back in September, I started regional groups for the United States. So I have a total of 6 groups that I admin with help. I don't do all this myself. But there are other groups for countries that people have reached out and asked if I would mind if they use the name to start a group for their country. So there's Canada, Australia, Europe, a German language group, because I keep saying Germany, and people are like, well, Germany's in Europe. Yes, I know, but it's a German language group. And I had someone from Switzerland reach out, and South Africa, and they're working on building a team to moderate the groups. So yeah, it's crazy. Like, I never expected that. The last count I had, there were close to 90,000 members worldwide in all the groups.
Oh my gosh.
And can we ever get enough info about moss? I don't think so. Paul Moore.
And it's your interest and knowledge of moss has become more of a focus.
Yes, it has, and quite by accident. About 5 years ago, I'll kind of preface it with this. About 5 years ago, I took a personal commitment to go as deep as I could into the things I love related to nature, to really take it next level. So I began this reading like crazy, reading book after book after book, doing lots of research, talking to people throughout the industry, and really trying to just deepen my love and knowledge of plants. And then at one point, I was kind of evaluating my garden at home, and it was basically all native plants, just a few odds and ends that weren't. And I had this grass lawn, and this grass lawn was requiring more maintenance than anything else I was doing. And I'm like, even though I was using organic, fertilizers on, I said, there's just got to be a better way. So, one fall, which is the time that you would normally sow new grass seed, I had this one area in the grass lawn. I said, I'm not going to sow any grass seed, and most of the area of the grass was dead or dying anyway. So I just said, I'm not going to do anything, which is hard for a gardener to do.
I bet.
We want to manipulate everything. So I decided to do nothing other than, I did notice in this one area there was a patch of moss, and I said, well, I wonder what happened if I just let that moss grow. And so what I did that winter is I kept all that debris off of it and pulled up what little dead and dying grass that was in there. And so I just observed, I watched. And then by that spring, I noticed that this green haze had formed over where this bare soil was. There wasn't a going on, but I knew something was changing and happening. And this original patch of moss had gotten bigger. And by, the next year, it was really starting to fill in. And by the following year, it was all moss.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool. And so I posted some photos on House Magazine and started sharing some photos of that, and then eventually converted the rest of my lawn over to moss. And the next thing I know, it's created this craze that people are just like loving it. And Garden Design Magazine came out, ended up doing a feature on it. Southern Living Magazine came out and did a feature on it. Wall Street Journal interviewed me 2 years ago about it, and it used one of my photographs and included in the interview. And now I lecture about moss, and people want to know all about it. And of course, I can guarantee you I can bring it up in just about any conversation.
I love it.
So moss is my, I tell people I'm a moss evangelist now. So.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, there is a particular coffee shop that when you walk in, there's chants of "Moss man, Moss man, Moss man."
Yeah, Frothy Monkey are in town. I got lots of friends over there, and a lot of times I'll wear my T-shirt that says Moss Man, or can you see this?
Yes, I love it.
The Moss Movement.
The Moss Movement.
It's slow.
Here's a woman who brightens every room with her beautiful spirit and vibrant pieces of art. Grayson Toal.
So I guess when you're sharing and when you're posting art, even just making art for yourself that doesn't get shared, it is a battle against inside and here. It's a battle against your own mind, but I think me having to overcome public perception and people's views of how I'm acting on social media, what I'm posting, what I'm painting, allows me to be just trust in myself and kind of remove the cringy label, or you know what I mean? Sometimes you get too much in your head about what other people are thinking, and I feel like throughout the journey of me on this account, it's shown itself in other areas of my life that don't even have to do with social media, but it's just trusting that I really shouldn't care what anyone thinks. And I feel like that's what running this account and showing my art has really done for me as a person, is full confidence, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks, and you can post and do whatever you want on your own page,
Yeah. You all love this man, not only on the audio broadcast, but also on YouTube, as he has been the most watched episode on YouTube. BJ Homesteader.
when we started off with poultry, like everything, you're not going to be perfect. It's hit and miss. Years ago, Lisa and I, we knew that we wanted to go ahead and look into the poultry. Of course, what breeds, how we were going to start that. I've got pictures from when we started way back. And some things when you start out, they're just not pretty. But when you look back now, our operation now is incredible. But that really is overwhelming, and it's really heartfelt. When you look back on the pictures when you first started, you see things that really resonate to what you're doing today.
Thank you so much for making this podcast possible. Thank you for listening and joining every time an episode drops. If you know of someone you think would make a good guest, please send me a DM on Instagram. I am currently scheduling guests for season 2 and would love your suggestions. Thank you so much for being here. And please remember to be kind to yourself, as you cannot hate yourself into a version you love. We will see you in season 2. I'm Lucretia, and you've been listening to Journey to the Rise.